Welcome back, my friends, to every naval battle in history. In this episode, we're exploring the second Roman victory at sea of 190 BCE, the Battle of Myonessus, fought by the fleet of the Roman Republic with their allies Rhodes and Pergamon against the Seleucid Empire. 190 BCE represents a real high point for the Romans. Having broken the back of Carthage in 201, they allied with the Greeks, heartily sick of Macedonian rule, to emerge triumphant from the Second Macedonian War in 197. They then turned on the resurgent Seleucid Empire, which stretched from the Mediterranean Sea to India and was ruled by the energetic Antiochus III, the Great, who had all but doubled the size of the empire under his reign. The Romans, on the other hand, had the Greek heartland on their side, the wealth of Spain and Sicily, and the rising Mediterranean powers of the Island of Rhodes, by this time controlling most of the Greek islands and associated trade routes, and the Anatolian shore in the form of the Kingdom of Pergamon. Opinion in Greece was, of course, divided. Even the most cursory study of ancient Greek history will reveal a deep and constant willingness amongst the ancient Greeks to fight each other. But it must have been a hard choice. The Romans were not Greeks and didn't speak their language, but they did make for reliable allies and competent hegemons. The Seleucids, on the other hand, were definitely fellow Greeks, but rather weird ones by this point, deeply influenced by their long residence in the east and the cultures of Persia and Babylon. In August of 190 BCE, the Rhodians had smashed a Seleucid Punic fleet under the legendary Hannibal at the Second Battle of the Eurymedon, which we covered in episode 43. 1 month later, the Romans, under Lucius Aemilius Regillius, moved to relieve the siege of Notium off the coast of modern-day Turkey. The largest Seleucid fleet under Polyxenidas, himself a Rhodian exile, surprised the allies as they were putting at sea, which should have been a good start. But one thing we've learned in this period is that surprise was no guarantee of success against either the Rhodians or the Romans. The Seleucids had 89 ships to the allied force of 80, so they outnumbered them as well as having surprise. But the Rhodians outforced the Seleucids on the seaward flank, thwarting their efforts to perform an encirclement. Notably, the Rhodian squadron was led by Eudamus, the hero of the battle the month earlier against Hannibal. At this point, Lucius Aemilius Regillius broke through the centre, and the Seleucid landward wing was too distant to keep him pinned, allowing him to wheel into the rear of their seaward wing. The Rhodians are also recorded to have made murderous use of fire baskets in this engagement. The Seleucid fleet's detached landward wing under Polyxenidas decided they didn't want to hang around for the ensuing slaughter and withdrew to Ephesus. The Roman force had lost 2 ships sunk and 1 captured, while the Seleucids lost 29 sunk and 13 captured. The rise of Rhodes as a necessary precondition for the Roman takeover of the Eastern Med was something I certainly didn't understand before doing this series. Following this battle, the Mediterranean was truly Mare Nostrum to the Romans, simply our sea. Their dominance would last 600 years. The Rhodian navy, immediately after the battle, would bottle up Hannibal at Megiste, and the Roman army was safe to invade Asia Minor. Antiochus at this point sought peace with them, but it was too late for that. Scipio Asiaticus would lead the Roman army to victory at Magnesia, and the Seleucids were forced back behind the Taurus Mountains. Under the Treaty of Apamea, Pergamon and Rhodes were richly rewarded with new territories. As part of the treaty, the Seleucids were forced to pay 15,000 talents of silver, around 450 tons, and give up their elephants and their fleet. It's worth noting that the Carthaginian reparations for the Second Punic War, in which they killed 1 in 6 Roman men and laid waste to the Italian landscape for 17 years, was only 10,000 talents, a third less than the Seleucids were expected to pay. Antiochus III would die, and I quote, while pillaging a temple at Susa in Persia in 187 BCE. Apparently he was looking for silver to pay the Romans with, and the locals were extremely unhappy about his pillage of their holy place, and even one of the greatest emperors in history has to be careful about that kind of thing. It's also worth noting that when you've got the greatest general in history on the bench, in the form of Hannibal, using him solely as an admiral is probably not the smartest thing you can do, although Hannibal did mobilise the resources of Tyre. Strap in, folks, we've got lots more to cover as we take on every naval battle in history. Smash those like and subscribe buttons, ring that bell, you don't want to get left behind.